Okay, so hello, darlings. I'm Tad. I'm here for about the next hour, and good night to read, I think. Anyway, hope you're well, and thank you for joining me. Those of you who have or are in the process of joining me, or even those of you who are joining me in a time shifted way via the YouTube channel or watching it tomorrow on one of my Facebook pages or something like that. It doesn't matter. Um, if you like it live, if you like it live, then live is fine. If you prefer to take it in a in a slightly, if you don't want it neat, I guess, if you want it on the rocks or something like that, then that's okay too. It's all good. I have no problems with any of it. Anyway, so hello, good to see you. I am in just middle of craziness mode, but that's nothing new. But it's not anything to do with anything work related. Well, it's all work related, but I'm just dealing with various stuff that we're dealing with around here because of our usual confusing situation. So, just doing a lot of stuff. We're also going to be traveling in September, so I'll warn you about that now. It also, since this is the night that I usually have more, or this is the time slot that I usually have more of my European friends. I will be in England September 10th through sort of like the middle of the month. I mean, sort of through about the 24th or 25th. But the main thing is that if any of you are available for British Fantasy Con, I will be at British Fantasy Con this year, which is, I think, September 13th, 14th, around there. It's that weekend. Um, and Deborah will be too. So if you are around and are thinking of going to British Fantasy Con or are already going to British Fantasy Con, please come and say hello. I don't know what I'll be doing yet, but I have, once we found out that we would be able to travel at that point, I've contacted the folks at Fantasy Con and told them, and I'm on at least one panel, and I think Deb's on a panel too, and I'll try to be available for, if anybody wants anything signed. However, that also means that I will be not reading for those weekends, I guess. I'll have to get the exact dates for you, but I will let you know. It's a big deal to be going back to the UK, especially for Deb, who hasn't been there for some years. I was there for Fantasy Con in Brighton some 4 or 5 years back. I can't remember now. It was pre-COVID. That's all I remember. Um, but Deb hasn't been there for a while, and of course, Deb is by birth English, and her family is still there, and our family, since I am an in-law of the family. And so we're really looking forward to seeing everybody. We haven't seen many of our There, people in our family there have given birth several times, since we've seen anybody. So there are babies that we haven't seen, and there are babies who are now young children or even not so young children. So yeah, we're really looking forward to it. So I'm enjoying the idea, and Deb, of course, is very happy because she's been desperate to get back to the UK for a while. So that's coming up. But as I said, that's not immediately. That's, I think, we're leaving on around the 10th or something. And we will have people staying here, our young people. We have kept them with us this long in large part because we thought we might be able to make it to England, and as a result, we kind of said to them, "Well, why don't you wait to move out to your next destination until after we've done that, so that the dogs, who are unfortunately extremely peopled, they're not." Like normal animals anymore. They really are, they pine if their people are not around. So we have doomed ourselves a long time ago to this particular reality that we have animals who don't do well unless there are people staying with them. So we pretty much always have to have dog sitters before we go. And we have to have dog sitters who know the dogs and know, our setup and all that. Anyway, not meaning to go off into great detail about that, but I'm already worried about Johnny, who's very fretful, and hates it when I go anywhere. I've mentioned in the past that when Johnny sees the suitcase come out, Johnny just goes into a deep, deep doggy depression. It's the saddest thing you've ever seen. He just slumps around the house and he hates it. Um, so, but there, we do occasionally have to go places, and it's hard to explain that to a dog, but we do still have to go places. Our kids were always much better with it than the dogs. Our kids were like, "Oh yeah, okay, Dad, see you later." I mean, I think they occasionally missed me, but they were much cooler about the whole thing. Whereas the dogs, Johnny actually just goes and sleeps next to the front door usually for the whole time I'm gone, from what I've been told. Anyway, so that's what's going on. The Navigator's Children, I still don't have any information to give anybody on the actual publication dates because we're through a variety of complicated situations. My publishers changing their corporate affiliations and things like that. I don't have a whole lot to say about what's going on with publishing dates and publishing schedules. I am pretty much finished with the book. I mean, there's still process to go with Navigator's Children. There's still process. There will be a copy editing phase, at which point I will get the book back with copy with copy edits in it and things like that. And and then it will go to final publication, print run, and all that kind of stuff. But that's still a ways away. So in the interim, when I have some spare time, I'm going to be working on the last Ordinary Farm book, which we've only been working on for like 15 years now. The Ordinary Farm, to write 3 books, which for me is shameful and shocking. You know me, I pride myself on actually getting things finished, but for a variety of reasons, not least of which the weird publication history of the Ordinary Farm books. And then because of COVID and a bunch of other things and many other factors and me having surgery and et cetera, and all these kinds of things that happen is just delayed and delayed and delayed. Deb actually finished a first draft like 2 years ago, maybe more now, and which was right at the time that I got into trying to finish Navigator's Children. So it's been waiting, and I will get to it, and then I will be working on The Splintered Sun, I believe, is my next new project. New in the sense that I will be starting it from scratch, but it's going to be an Ostenard book, a single volume. And I'll tell you more about it when I have more to tell, and I may even share some little bits and pieces with you guys if I am still doing this or something equivalent to this. So, without further ado, that's kind of the only news here. Except for that I had a very nice time with Patrick Rothfuss and Nadia Corafor doing a conversation. I mean, it certainly wasn't an argument because we pretty much agreed on most things, and had a very nice discussion. I hope some of you got a chance to see it. If not, I will, when I know where it's available, I will post it on social media. Let me think. What else was there? Oh, and then we had our other kids, the ones who are not living at home, have come back from Northern California. And so we got to see them tonight too, which was grand. And everybody was very happy to see each other, and everybody was very familial in all the best senses. And the dogs were thrilled because Johnny has been feeling for ever since they moved out over a year ago. Johnny has been feeling like he's not a herding dog, but he's always very much like he wants all his people. That's one of the reasons he hates it when I go away. He hates it when anybody leaves. He wants everyone to be around, and so I'm sure he was kind of really puzzled that 2 members of the family just left. And, I'm sure he thought that was very clumsy of us to allow that to happen. So he and Walter were both thrilled when the young people returned to the household tonight. That was great fun seeing how happy and excited they were. I mean, I was happy and excited too, and so was Deb. We do love our family, and it was grand having them over. And we look forward to seeing more of them while they are here. Anyway, okay, I think that's everything I wanted to check in with. I'm also, oh, and of course, as always, just as I was feeling very fretful about the horrible, horrible heat waves and everything, and tornadoes and crap going on all across the South, and the Midwest, and even up into the East. And this weekend, we are fretting, of course, the joys that climate change is bringing to us. We're actually having a tropical storm. Now, it's not going to affect us or very little because of where we are located in California. We might get a little bit of rain, but other than that, probably nothing. But the southern part of the state, and especially the area from San Diego and up into the Mojave, up into the desert, is liable to get a real lashing from this tropical storm, including quite a bit of rain. And in most places, that's not that much of an issue, but in the desert, it is. It causes flash flooding and can be very dangerous, and even people can die who are caught by surprise because it can happen so quickly. So, anyway, and the ground, of course, is very, very hard, especially in the middle of the summer when you don't get tropical storms. And so the water just rushes, and they're going to get like maybe 4 inches in one day, which is sometimes more than they get in an entire year. So I'm concerned for any friends and folks who might be in the path of that as well. But there's precious little I can do about it except to send good vibes, which I am doing my best to do. So let me check in and see who has wandered in to hang out with me here. And that one is not available. So let's check this page and see who has checked in. Kristen says, California is a huge state. Yes, it is. We are very large. In fact, you can kind of put all of the UK into California. All right, so what am I doing here? Okay, so who has checked in? I can't get all the comments, of course. I never can. They give me like 5 at a time. See thread. And no, that doesn't work either. I don't know why Facebook makes it so difficult to see. Anyway, so let me just say hello to the people who have popped in that I actually have some kind of record of. So Winter, I see Winter has popped in. So good to see you, Winter, and Kristen, and Christina, hello, and Andre, and Mahmoud, and Jeremy, hello, Jeremy, and Wouter, and Tash, and Petra, and Sherry, and Suzanne. That's Suzanne Owen. I think we have more than one Suzanne. And Rosalba. And there is my mother-in-law, Hazel. Hello, sweetie. Good to see you. Your daughter went to bed a very happy woman at having had her family over and making dinner for them all. And a very nice dinner we had and a very nice time. And so she's doing well, although she is currently sleeping, as most sane people are in this part of the world at this time of the night. So anyway, good to see you, sweetie. We miss you, and we look forward to seeing you real soon. Chris, hello, good to see you. And Iris, a pleasure also, as always. Dirk, and Christy, and Nikki, that's Nikki Chetwind, and Tammy, hello, Tammy, and 4 more. But of course, it doesn't tell me who the 4 more are. No, doesn't tell me who the other 4 are. So, Alvaro Noldor is one of them. Who else? Let me see. Warren Britton. There's Warren. Jenny Lynch. Meryl DeGroot. Hello, Meryl. Claire. Hello. And Troy. And Fiona and Penny. So good to see you all. Thank you for joining me. It's a great pleasure to have you. And so without further ado, actually, it's just plain old adieu. But it is a pun in Shakespeare. I'll explain that some other time. Anyway, it's the pun is the quality of mercy is not strained, but blah 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 blah, and resolves into adieu. And adieu here means also not just ADEW, which is of course how it's spelled because it's the rain coming down. It's the metaphor, but adieu means to God, and is French for goodbye. but it also signifies death, obviously, in this case. So anyway, um, bibble babble. So let me just check in and see if there's anything else I want to say. No, so I'm just going to start reading. Um, all right. So did we get that? All right. Okay, so what has happened is that after he almost died from his wounds, Hakatri, along with our narrator, Pamonkes, and Inaluki, Hakatri's brother, went back to Azua so that Hakatri can be tended for his horrible burns from the killing of the dragon. So while he is being tended to by, among others, one of Utuku's hand-picked magicians, I guess you'd say, which worries Pamonkes more than a little. Pamon has been sent off, or Kes has been sent off by the master and mistress of Azua to go back to talk to Lord Zaniko about giving them some help to help to cure Hakatri from his wounds, since Zaniko is one of the few people who's ever fought a dragon and survived. And although he too was burned by the dragon that he killed. So anyway, that's where we had stopped, and I am going to start back at this section. So he is now at Raven's Perch, the castle of Zaniko, and his wife Lady Ona, and Lady Ona's friend and helper Sholi, who we will hear more about. Anyway, Ona called to one of her mortal servants to bring more honey mead, and we three, those three are Pamonkes, Lady Ona, and Lady Sholi, and we three drank together, watching the shadows of clouds slide across the meadows. "It is very peaceful here," I said. For the first time in longer than I could remember, the drumbeat of duty had quieted a little inside me, and I felt a small contentment. "Peaceful, yes," said the lady of the house. "But it is cold in the winter, and with so few in the household, I sometimes feel lonely, as you have already heard me say." "Lonely, with me here to amuse you," said Sholi in mock annoyance. "Some people are never satisfied." Ona laughed and embraced her. "You are the best of all companions, my dear one, but you know what I mean." Sholi gave her friend a last squeeze. "Yes, of course." She turned to me, bright eyes flashing. "We often talk about how nice it would be to receive more visitors." I wondered again if I might be nothing more than a diversion, if they would have been just as friendly and forthcoming to any visitor. That struck me as an unworthy thought, so I did my best to push it away and enjoy the sunshine and the company instead. It almost seemed, though, that my fleeting worry had somehow changed the balance of the day, because Lady Ona suddenly grew more serious. "It is sad that there are so few of our folk around," she said. "I mean those of our kind who can think and act for themselves. Nakiga is full of the other kind, the ones who were shaped for their labor, bred to be little more than animals." "Shaped?" I asked in surprise. "What does that mean?" "Remember," she said, "we are children of the dreaming sea, Kes. Our nature is change. Even back in the garden, the Kedaya masters had begun using our own nature to breed us into beasts of burden or living tools like the Delvers." The Delvers? This was new and astonishing. "You mean the famous builders, the creatures who could shape solid rock as if it were wet clay? They were also Tenukadaya once?" "Yes. But no matter what was done to them, they are all still Tenukadaya, still Vow. That is our own name for our kind, just as you and I and Sholi are. Change was forced upon their bodies, but not their minds and spirits, although some of their less fortunate kin,
like the Carey men, had even their knowledge of themselves taken from them to make them more useful servants. And it was not only Utuku's Hikidaya who used our folk that way. Her expression had become stern, even angry. All the 9 cities in these lands were built by our kind, and they brought far more to making those monuments than just strong backs. The vow were the guiding spirits that created the shining walls and towers of Azua, your home. Your masters seem to have cheated you of this knowledge, Kes. I cannot believe that. My master Hakatri has never lied to me. There is a difference between telling a lie and avoiding a truth. I turned to Sholi almost as if I hoped she would contradict Lady Ona, but instead she was watching me with what looked like keen interest. I do not mean to insult your Lord Hakatri, Ona went on. I do not doubt his kindness to you, but even the most honorable Zidaya never lifted their voices against the terrible treatment of our folk. Hakatri's silence may come mostly from shame. I could only shake my head. This is much to take in, Lady Ona. I know, Kes, but few of us who still remember these things will speak of them. You are a favorite of one of the most powerful Zidaya lords. I would rather burden you with knowledge than leave you happily and dangerously ignorant. Dangerously? I was very quiet after that, which should be no surprise, and the 2 ladies shifted their conversation toward more ordinary things. The mortal servants, the weather, the few guests who had come to Ravensperch between my 2 visits. But Ona's words would not leave my thoughts. The more we speak together, the more I realize how little I know, my lady, I said to her at last. May I ask you about something else that has puzzled me? You told me when we first met that your name was Saruyan, Ona. Is the name of Ruyan common among the vow? No, Kes, she said. My name means I am of that line, just as yours means you are of the Pemon clan. But my clan name is merely that of my lady, of my family lady. Sorry, let me start that sentence again. But my clan name is merely that of my family lady. Ruyan, the navigator, is famous the world over. Are you truly of his blood? So I was always told, and so I believe. Perhaps that is why I care so much about our people's past and our future. But before I could ask her anything else, Lady Ona abruptly rose from the bench. Come, Sholi, she said. The time has come for our friend Kes to take his message to his lordship. You and I must also put on more acceptable garb. Look, it is almost noon and we are still wearing our night clothes. Sholi yawned and stretched, which does not sound charming, but was, even in my troubled state. I am tired after all that wine and talk, she said. I think I might go back to bed. You will do nothing of the sort. Ona pretended to be strict. We have the week's accounts to do, and the cook has demanded I go through the larder with her so that we may plan for the next trip down to market. First, though, lead our friend to Lord Zaniko's retiring room. Is his lordship expecting me? I asked, still a bit befuddled by the swift change in the conversation. He asked us to send you to him at midday, said Ona. That hour has come. Sholi will take you. If my husband does not answer at first, knock again. On days like this he is often far away. In his thoughts, I mean. I supposed from the significant looks that passed between Ona and her friend that Sholi was also meant to give me some message, but she stayed silent as she led me through the castle to the tower, then up the steps. When we reached the heavy oak door, she paused to look at me, and I prepared myself for some whispered revelation. But Sholi only nodded, not so much to me as to herself. "We hope we will see you again before you depart, Pamonkes," she said quietly, then left me there on the doorstep. Puzzled, but with the purpose of my journey now at hand, I knocked. I was prepared to knock again, but Zaniko's voice bade me enter. Inside the tower room, the windows were all covered. A single candle burned in a dish on a small table. Lord Zaniko sat in a high-backed chair beside the table, wearing his usual dark clothing, his head low and shoulders hunched, so that my first impression was of a raven or even a bat. His long white hair was braided in back, but hung down on either side of his face like curtains. The room itself must have been his library, with books and parchment scrolls stacked high on shelves along the walls. "So, Armiger Pamon from Aswa." Zaniko did not sound particularly pleased by my entrance, but neither did he seem angry. In fact, he seemed like one who cared little about such mundane things as visitors and conversations of any sort. I had the clear feeling that I was disturbing him at a time when he would rather have been alone, so I bowed and greeted him with all the trappings of proper respect, then told him of the invitation from Protector Iunigato and Lady Amarasu, and I set Initri's rose ring on the table before him as proof of what I said. "Tell them I will not come," he said when I had finished, then pushed the ring away with the tip of his forefinger as though he did not much want to touch it. Surprised, I stood silent for a long moment after this abrupt refusal. "Is there anything else I can tell them, my lord?" I finally asked. "Is there some medicament you know of that might give my master relief from pain? After all, you told us that you had been burned by dragon's blood as well. You showed us your hand." For the first time, Lord Zaniko really looked at me, as though he had forgotten that day until I spoke of it. "It is useless," he said. "There is nothing to be done." "I do not understand, Lord." "I cannot imagine why. Can it be made any clearer?" He pulled the glove off his crippled hand and lifted the burnt flesh toward me. "There are times when the pain of this is almost beyond bearing. It was spattered with the snare worm's blood more than 3 great years ago, long, long before you were born. Yet there are days it still pains me as badly as it did when it happened. Your master's wounds are worse." He shook his head. "But that is not the whole of the story. Worm's blood, it has power, terrible power. It fills your head with thoughts and infects your dreams as well. Does your master talk about his dreams?" "Yes, but dreams are common with fevers." "Not this kind. Not dreams that show you other places, other worlds even. Not dreams that tell you what others are thinking or what the future will bring." Do you have such dreams, my lord?" "Not every day, but I do have them. It is like a sort of fit. I do not know when it will come until it is upon me. Sometimes it is an ecstasy, like casting off the chains of life and stepping out to bathe in the sea of stars. Other times it seizes me with such dreadful visions that my heart feels like it will burst. But the pain, the burning feeling in the flesh, that never goes away for long, and I fear it will be the same for your master, or even worse, because his injuries are greater than mine." My own pain from touching the dragon's blood had largely faded, and I suppose I had half hoped something like that would one day be true for my master as well. So Zaniko's words felt like a blow to my body. I may even have taken a staggering step backward. Are you saying that my master will never recover? I am saying exactly that, Armiger. And I am also saying that in some ways the master you knew is gone, just as if he had died in Serpent's Vale or whatever the wretched place is named. He will never be the same. The worm's black blood is in him now. There is no remedy, or I would know of it. I could barely draw breath. And his terrible pain will never cease? Zaniko lifted his gloved hand in a gesture. Oh, the pain. That is the least of it. That comes and goes, though it never entirely recedes. There may be things that the healers of Aswa can do to ease it a little. I must have stared at him in a way that was unbecoming, but at the moment I could barely even think. You put a dire weight upon me, my lord, I said at last, and picked up the witchwood ring the masters of Aswa had sent. You will not come to Aswa, and the only message you send is that all is hopeless for Lord Akatri. He laughed harshly. What did you expect? That because I had suffered something like, I could come to Aswa and anoint him with a secret healing oil and all would be well again? The exile got up and walked to the window, as though he could look right through the heavy draperies that covered it. Putting aside the distaste I have for your master's kin, who never offered me kindness or even civility until now, I tell you in truth that there is nothing I can say or do that will help. I cannot be clearer than that. So that is the whole of your reply? It must be. And you have never found anything to ease the pain of your own wound? He lifted his hands. It was hard not to stare at the red and ruined fingers. Nothing. Witchwood is too much like the dragon's blood. Any medicine like K-Visha that is made from it will eventually fail. Your master's caretakers will find that as time passes, it does less and less to ease his suffering. I was in such despair that I almost did not hear what he had said, but after a moment it struck me. What do you mean, Lord Zaniko, that witchwood is like dragon's blood? So my studies tell me. He waved his crippled hand at the shelves lining the walls. Since I was wounded, I have read every book I could discover that speaks of worm's blood, and I have corresponded with healers of many kinds and many races. I have learned much about the horrifying pain it causes and the bond it creates between the blood-burnt and the dream road. I still do not understand. How can the blood of a creature like the black worm also be like witchwood? Because they both come from the living heart of the garden, from the dreaming sea. As I sat, struck by hearing those words again so soon after Ona had used them, Zaniko sat down once more as if suddenly weary. Your own people likely understand it better than I ever could. Some even say your kind were born from that lost ocean. But even the Tanukadaya healers who have shared their knowledge with me have not found a way to counter the effects of such burns, though they admit that the connection is real. Connection. I was overwhelmed by so many new ideas, but even more by Zaniko's refusal to help my master. Between the dragons we unknowingly brought to this land and the witchwood we carried here, because we had built our lives in the garden around it. He pulled the glove back over his scarred fingers. I am weary now of talking. Go back to Oswa, Armiger. Tell them what I told you. Assure the High Lord and Lady that I am not lying, or withholding anything that might aid their wounded son. I have no aid to give, because I cannot even aid myself. Though I was reeling inside, I bowed and made my farewells as courteously as I could manage, then let myself out. The last I saw of Zaniko the exile, he was staring at his wounded hand as though it did not belong to him. I spent that evening with Lady Ona and Lady Sholi, but I was so stunned by my audience with Zaniko that I'm sure I did not make a very satisfying companion. I shared a little of what he had told me, but otherwise found it hard to make conversation, even in such agreeable company. All I could think of was my master, whose terrible suffering I had hoped would at least diminish over time, whether Zaniko could help or not. Now I would have to tell him that there was no relief to be found at Ravensperch, or perhaps anywhere. I went to bed early, apologizing to the ladies, who were disappointed but gracious. In the morning I made ready to ride. My heart was heavy, and as I tightened Frostmane's saddle straps in the stable, I heard someone call my name. When I looked up, I saw Sholi standing outside the doorway of the stable. I washed my hands in a bucket and went to her. Her presence lightened my spirit a little, which was heavier than it had been since we had brought my master home. Seeing her bathed in morning sunlight as I left the dark stable was like coming upon a hidden stream in dry hills. "I heard you are leaving," she said. "I came to see you off. I would have come to give thanks and make my farewells in person. My lady is not feeling well today, and Lord Zaniko is still in his tower room." She smiled. "The only one to whom you must bid farewell is me, and here I am." I was sad about the news I had to take to my master, very sad, and the thought that I might never again meet this pretty, clever, and kind young woman only added to my misery. "It was good to see you, Lady Sholi. It gives me a little heart to know such kind folk as you and your mistress are in this world." "Your own folk?" "My own folk, yes. In Azua, the other Tenukadaya are less like me than my masters are, if I can say that without sounding conceited. In a strange way, I feel at home here, and it is hard to leave." "It is also difficult to see you go, Kess," she said, then drew a letter from her sleeve. It was sealed with wax. "My lady sent this for you. She bade me give you her kindest regards and her wishes for a safe journey." "As do I." She seemed to be waiting for me to say or do something else, but I could think of nothing appropriate, so I took the letter and bowed. "Farewell, Lady Sholi," I said. "I shall always remember my time here at Ravensperch with fondness, but I must bear the news I have been given by Lord Zaniko back to my master." Sholi stared at me and flushed with what looked like anger, as if she would denounce me or even curse me. A moment later she forced herself to a more ordinary expression. "You are a bit of a fool, Pamunkes," she said evenly. "But it is not all your fault, and I will miss your company." Then she turned and walked away across the courtyard, leaving me to stare after her in wonder and sadness. Having failed to bring back Zaniko, I did not hurry my return to Azwa. As I rode down the mountain from Ravensperch, I read Lady Ona's message. "To the Honorable Armiger Pamunkes, I am sorry I was not able to see you off this morning. I was unwell, and I beg your pardon for sending only this letter instead. I must confess that I never believed you would be able to convince my husband to accompany you. It would take far more than a sudden invitation from the Lord and Lady of Aswa to lure him from this place. He chose Ravensperch and its remoteness for a reason. He is as unlikely to leave it as any animal that feels threatened is loath to leave its burrow. But that does not help you in your quest to aid your master, I know, and so I wish to share a suggestion with you. I understand that your master's health is your first responsibility. If Lord Hakatri continues to search for a cure for his suffering, I suggest he should not scorn the possibility of help from our own Tenukadaya folk. Your folk, Kess. My husband has consulted those he knows, but there are more than a few vow healers in the wide world. Many of them live among our Niski kin in the mortal city of Naban. Just as they differ from your master's kind in other ways, some of the Sea Watcher healers may have knowledge about his dreadful condition that his own people do not, since the dragons are said to have first come from the dreaming sea, back in the lost garden, as we of the vow also did, according to our oldest stories. Also, it is not impossible that the mortals themselves may have found new healing arts that the immortals do not know. If your master is truly desperate for help, there are worse places he could go than south, to the lands that now belong to men. I wish you luck, and I wish it for your unhappy master as well. I know he means much to you. I hope you will come back and see us again before too long. We enjoy your company very much. She signed it, Your friend, Ona, Lady of Ravensperch. As had been true after my first meeting with the residents of Zaniko's tiny fiefdom, I was left puzzled. Ona's letter said, We enjoy your company very much, but Sholi had called me a fool to my face. I admired Sholi, and she seemed to enjoy my company as well, but it seemed arrogant to believe she thought of me as anything other than a pleasant diversion in a lonely place. And even if she did feel real affection toward me, the sort that might grow into something deeper, had we not both agreed during our first meeting that I could not leave Lord Hakatri, and she could not leave Lady Ona? So how could there be a purpose to anything between us beyond friendship? I had promised my life and my service to my lord. Perhaps that was foolish, as Sholi had said, and perhaps Lady Ona was right when she suggested that my master's folk had misused my people, but even that did not release me from the bonds of love and honor that held me. That night, in my camp beside the road, my mother came to me in a dream, dressed in mourning white and wearing a blindfold of linen across her eyes. My child, this beloved phantom said, I will always be a part of you, just like the dreaming sea. When I awoke, I thought it was only a sort of fever dream created from Ona's words. But as I think back now, after all that happened, I believe it was true memory, and I am grateful for it. I did not get back to Aswa until the otter moon had appeared. I reached the city walls at the same time as a sad procession returned from Serpent's Vale. As I waited at the gates, the wagons bearing the covered bodies of Yoe and the others that Hidohebi had slain passed into the city. A crowd waited on the court of gathering to honor the return of the city's dead. Those who retrieved them had also brought back a trophy of sorts, the black worm's skull, which had a wagon to itself at the end of the procession. The people of the city watched it pass, not with cries of loathing, but with sad faces and silence. Many of them wore mourning masks of ash painted across the eyes, their golden stares gleaming out of the darkness like treasures in an ancient cave. As soon as I had given Frostmane to a groom, I hurried to my master's chamber, but when I reached his door I was kept from entering by several Zediah servants. This unnerved me, and I argued with them, but they would not let me in, nor would they tell me why I was being kept out. As I begged to be let in to see him, the door opened, and a tall figure emerged from my master's bedchamber. It was Hakatri's wife, Lady Briseu, and seeing her, my heart sank even lower. I feared something terrible had happened. "Pamon Kes," she said in a soft but stern voice, "why do you make such noise here?" Her expression should have lifted my spirits. I saw no sign of mourning or deep sorrow, but the feelings of my master's folk are often beyond my ability to recognize. "How is my lord Hakatri? I have only just returned. Why can I not go to him? Please tell me, my lady." She held up her long fingers in a gesture for quiet, then opened the door and stepped aside so I could see. My master lay stretched on his bed. His eyes were closed, and I could make out nothing of his condition. A figure dressed all in white sat on a stool beside him, but it looked too slender to be the Nakiga song lord, Jikio. For a moment my dream about my mother's shade came back to me, filling me with dread. Then I saw that the pale shape sitting beside my master was not my long-dead mother, but Hakatri's living one, Lady Amarasu. The Sauntsara held her spread hands above his chest, and I could hear a low murmur of song. I could feel something else, too, a heaviness to the air inside the chamber, as though I breathed something more tangible than what usually filled my chest. Then Briseu of the silver braids pulled the door closed once more. "As you see, his mother is with him. She does what she can to ease his suffering, which is why you were kept out. You need not worry so, Armiger." "I did not know that Amarasu was also a healer," I said, struggling to calm myself. Briseu smiled, but she looked very weary. "She is the Sauntsara, Armiger. She can do many things. She has been often with him in recent days, trying to help him. Just now she has sung one of her most powerful songs, invoking a word of preservation to give him some protection against his pain." "Did his suffering increase while I was gone?" Her smile disappeared. "Somewhat. But let us see what Lady Amarasu can do for him." I waited in the hallway as an hour or more passed. At last, the singing behind the door stopped, and the Sauntsara left my master's bedside. Amarasu's drawn face and uneven steps as she came out to us showed how much strength that word of preservation had taken from her. As Briseu took her arm to help her back to her own chambers, Amarasu's golden eyes briefly met mine, but she did not greet me or even seem to recognize me. She looked like someone who had barely won a hard-fought battle and knew the war would eventually be lost. When Briseu and the Sauntsara had gone, I rushed in to see my master. The chamber still had a strange feel to it, like the air after a sudden summer storm, and also an odd lingering scent, acrid but also sweet, like a mixture of rose petals and the ashes of Pajaura cedar wood. Hakatri seemed to be sleeping peacefully, but I could not forget the look of defeat I had seen on his mother's face, and I ached at the thought that I still had to return the ring and relate to the protector Zaniko's refusal. "I worried for you all the time I was traveling,
I told my master when he was awake again.
Has the Sansera's song helped to lessen your pain? As terrible as it is, my pain is still only a thing of the body.
In truth, he looked a bit stronger. Excuse me. In truth, he looked a bit stronger than he had before I left, but his expression was troubled.
My mother's song has helped some, but the other part of my malady is beyond even the Sansera's powers. The worm's blood has changed me, Pamon, in many strange ways. I feel as though I have grown another set of eyes and ears. I see things I never saw before, hear things that I was deaf to before the dragon's blood burned me. And it becomes even more uncanny when I sleep and dream. The whole world seems to roll beneath me, showing me everything, but the visions are so vast, so powerful, that I often cannot understand them. It sounds like you still have fever, my lord.
He shook his head.
It is nothing so simple. From what you told me, Zaniko would understand it better than most. It is a pity he will not come. I could learn much from him. Perhaps, my lord, but he holds many grudges. I do not know Zaniko's history except what you and his kin have told me, but he strikes me as the sort who does not forget any injury done to him.
My master gave a bitter little laugh, then winced at the pain it caused.
Yes, I know someone like that, all too well. In any case, I said, I am happy and grateful to see you more like yourself, my lord. I did not want to leave you, but the errand was for your sake, and it came from your father and mother.
He nodded. You have nothing with which to fault yourself, faithful Pamon, and good may come from your journey after all. I read the letter Lady Ona gave you.
She seems sincere in wanting to help, my lord. But to seek among the mortals.
He laughed again, though his teeth stayed clenched in discomfort.
It will confirm everything my brother fears.
It was good to see him jest, but it pointed up the changes his misfortune had worked on him.
Hakatri, once the very soul of steadiness, now seemed as changeable as a horse beset by flies, laughing one moment, then suddenly gasping or twitching, his face creasing as the agony of his burns escaped his ability to suppress it. It tugged at my heart to see him still suffering so badly, even after his mother's intervention, but I also wondered what other changes the dragon's blood had wrought. "And will you take Lady Ona's advice?" I asked. "Not yet, Pamon. There are more healers of my own kind I should seek out first. Azua may be the first city of our people, and the learned folk here have done everything they could, but who is to say that in Hikahikayo or even Nakiga itself we could not find scholars who know more than anyone in my parents' court?" "You would go to Nakiga, my lord?" I said in astonishment. "To Utuku Silvermask's court?" I could not help wondering whether Jikio, the singer, had put this idea in my master's head. "To Nakiga? That is a foolish question." He fixed me with a hard look, but I saw something deeper and more frightened moving beneath it, and for the first time I understood how terribly hard he was laboring simply to keep up the illusion of what he had been. I remembered Zaniko's warning that I might never again see the Hakatri I had known so well, my master and my hero, that the dragon's blood might have changed him beyond all recovery. "I would go anywhere if I could find something that would make me myself again," he said. "Anywhere." So it was that after being back in Azua for only a short time, I prepared for yet another journey, feeling a little like the Harcha sunbird, which is said to have no legs and only stops flying when it dies. But I could not let Hakatri go out into the world without me, so I hid my weariness and made ready. To my surprise, Inaluki insisted on accompanying us to Nakiga. Much as he loved Hakatri, I suspected that joining us had more to do with how unhappy Inaluki was within the walls of Azua, where many blamed him for his brother's terrible injuries, though never to his face. Inaluki was always thin-skinned, at least compared to my master. We set out a little after midsummer, at the beginning of the fox moon, when the northern weather would be kindest to travelers, though my master would have preferred to go in the depths of winter. Despite my mother's efforts, even the merest touch of the sun makes the burning worse, Pamon, he confided to me after the first time he tried to leave his bedchamber. It feels as if I have set my flesh in living flame. He did not exaggerate. On our journey to Nakiga, Hakatri spent nearly all the daylight hours, even early morning or twilight, in a closed litter. Sometimes he was borne on a wagon, but other times, when the going became too difficult, servants took up the litter and carried my master on foot. On the worst days, Hakatri could not bear even the touch of his feather-light robes. I had to undress him so he could lie naked on his pallet in the litter, and even when the robes had been removed, he moaned as if we had wrapped him in thorns instead of silk. The roads we followed on this long, harrowing journey were ancient ones, scarcely used these days because so few travel between Azua and the lands of the Hikedaya. Where the roads still connected Zidaya settlements, they had been maintained, but in many stretches across the wide, empty snowfields, the roads all but disappeared. Some mortal men still hung on in these dreary gray lands, but we saw few of them, since they mostly kept their distance from my master's people. The great mountain became visible long before our journey ended, watching over the last days of our travel. Some of my master's people say that Nakiga was once a fire mountain, like Sunhinakta, ancient curse of the southern islands. When the 8 ships first came from the garden, Nakiga still belched flame and smoke and made the earth around it shake, but it has long since fallen asleep. Even silent, though, the great mountain stares down over the small, bashful hills that surround it, ominous as an angry elder. We reached the outer city at last and rode along the royal way toward the entrance. There was no hint of ceremony for our arrival, though I guessed it had been a very long time indeed since any of Clan Saonsere had come to Nakiga. White-skinned faces peered out at us from doorways and windows, but the watchers did not leave their houses, as if my master's terrible malady might be dangerous to others. We approached Nakiga's massive gates through a vast field lined with weather-worn stone statues. The gates stood 10 times my height, made of witchwood so ancient it was almost black, with massive bronze hinges aged to the green of dying grass. Lord Hiki, the Queen's high celebrant, wore a mask that covered all of his face but his dark eyes, as many of Utuku's closest minions did and still do. He met us in the massive entry hall beyond the gate. As it turned out, he was the highest official we ever saw. Neither Queen Utuku nor any of her closest advisers seemed interested in us, or so I thought. Later, I learned differently. But we had nothing to complain about in High Celebrant Hiki's greeting, which was respectful and welcoming. We had just finished a very long journey across the barren snowfields and the colder mountainous uplands called Cruel Winds, and I was quite weary. I stared at the strange buildings and statue-haunted crossings as we made our way through the open spaces of Nakiga's main level, but I could not summon much interest. The streets were dark and wide, and a somber image of Druki, the White Prince, Utuku's dead son, seemed to watch us wherever we went. The roaring waters of the gigantic Tearfall, which plummeted down from somewhere high in the mountain and filled half of Nakiga with spray, could be heard in all parts of that ground level, except behind the thickest walls. And I glimpsed other sights just as astounding. Park gardens of ghostly white fungus, massive temples as dark inside as the bottom of a well, even when crowded with Nakiga folk, but all of them seemed like shadows to me. Now I mourn all that I failed to study or even notice, since I doubt I will ever see that strange secretive city again, and it is unlike any other. And I am going to stop there, because there is no good, obvious place to stop in the next few minutes. And so I am going to stop there. So with that, I will say many, 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 many thanks. And I appreciate your joining me, as always. And I will be reading again at 7 p.m. for those who are interested in such things. 7 p.m. tonight, that is. And let me think, anything else? Nah, that's about it, really. So without further ado, I will again say what a pleasure it was to have you joining me, and to remind you to take good care of yourselves. I'm feeling very fatherly, grandfatherly, uncly, avuncular, after having had so much family around me and worrying about people driving and taking care of themselves and all that stuff. So it's up to you guys to help me out by taking good care of yourselves and the folks around you. And I will see some of you tomorrow night or tonight later at 7 p.m. And those of you I don't see then, I will probably see next week this time, because as I said, I'm not going to be going anywhere again till into September. So we will definitely be reading next week, barring acts of God. So with that, I say, have a great night, have a great morning, have a great day, wherever you happen to be. Take good care, and I will see you soon. Peace.